Hello, everybody. Today we're doing a long video again and a good macro explanation. We're trying to explain how to use high ground and what it is, and just all about it, right? So we hear a lot about high ground, but I don't see it a lot when I do VOD reviews. It's a very common thing when reviewing DPS or even when we're reviewing tanks is what is high ground, how to use it, how to not use it, how to deal with when other people are using it. And so we're just going to go through it. So I've pulled an example off of rivalsmeta.com. I just went and I picked a character. This is just a random person. This is a high celestial game, like Celestial 2, Celestial 1. There's a pretty good example of what we can find of high ground, right? So what we're going to see here, this is second point. Our team is already we don't have much control, right? We lose our invis. So what are we trying to do here? We're trying to buy our team time to get back. And you'll notice if this is low elo, right? If this is low elo, everybody's going to be down here. But since this is high elo, we're going to see the advantages of using high ground. So what does it look like when you use high ground? You come up here and you start spamming down main, right? Now, I want to pay attention to something, right? So when you're playing low elo and you are down here, right? Let's just say like the Scarlet Witch. Not saying she's low elo or anything, but the typical way you play is you use cover, right? And you use cover to minimize the damage you take when you don't want to be taking damage, right? So this Scarlet Witch, they're going to pop over to the side, and now the enemy has access to them, and they have access. They're going to do some damage, and then they're going to back up around the corner again, right? You do damage, then you back up. And then you do damage, you back up. And you say, I don't want to take damage anymore, and I'm going to use the cover. It works a little bit differently on high ground. High ground, instead of left, right, it's forward and back, right? So you see what this Namor is doing is he's standing a little bit farther back, and he's jumping up and down, which can work. He jumps up and then shoots. So what does this look like from the enemy's perspective? Watch the Hela, right? The Hela is trying to shoot. What does she actually have access to? His tiny little hitbox. Like, it's really difficult to actually shoot somebody off of high ground, right? Look at the access to the enemy that Namor has. What can Namor see? Especially because this is a third-person game. So your viewing angle, your advantage is just massive. Look, he sees just right here, he sees all of Strange's hitbox. If Hela moves out, he sees all of Hela's hitbox. He sees all of Spidey's hitbox and all of Daredevil. And what does Hela see? Because she's on the low ground. This Hela, she sees none of this person. She sees maybe the head hitbox of Namor, maybe. I mean, that's Scarlet Witch. And then she sees Namor when he chooses to let her see him, right? Which is only when he wants to do damage. Okay, so he pushes them back a little bit, and now he notices that, hey, this Hela she's backing up and she's using this cover, right? But there's a movement option here that he takes, and now he still has high ground, and she no longer has that cover. That whole cover is now gone. So this just becomes even more oppressive for this Hela. Check this out. Now she's fighting a squid and she's fighting a Namor, and the Namor has cover, and she can't choose when to stop engaging. It's only on the Namor, right? So this is just the power of high ground. You're able to see the enemies. They can't see you unless you want them to. You're able to stop them from moving forward just by your positioning and things like that. And it's so powerful. It's so good. Now, the only reason we lose high ground here is actually because the map, this part of the map breaks and Namor falls down. And he doesn't want to use his only escape cooldown to get up here, which is fair. But that really goes to show you just how valuable the third-person camera and abusing high ground is, right? Now we have another example. Like, now the Hela's up here. Hela's even more oppressive on the high ground. Now, if where Hela was before, right? Look at these two DPS. What are they shooting at? What are their options? Okay, their only options is Strange. Strange is in front. He has an 800 health shield. That's huge, right? And they can't even see the other people. But where Hela is right now, she can still shoot the Strange. Let's say the Strange starts to push really hard and is trying to ult. She can come over here and shoot the Strange, and these people can't shoot her at all, right? Or now she has access to these people, right? So being on high ground, it gives you access to everything, and you get to take control of the game and make options, make things happen, force the enemy team to make decisions based on your behalf, right? And this is just, like I said, like this is not getting used enough on all ranks, The other thing that I want to point out is when you're on high ground, you're not contending with tanks and support ults, right? So we had a strange ult earlier. Let's just say, like, assume this strange when he pushed in did ult. If you're standing up here, you're fine. You're out of the way. You're fine. Now that the cloak is going to ult, once again, if we're on high ground, we're not taking damage from this cloak ult. Okay? We're doing fine. And things like that. It helps so much. So, we're going to move to another VOD now. Because I want to talk about why we stop using it and how to get other people to stop using high ground. Okay, so I pulled this one. This is another random VOD from somebody I don't know on Rivals meta, right? So if we go over here and we look at this Phoenix, this fight is going to break down. See if I can find the right spot. I think it's at the very beginning. Yeah, right here. Here we go. We're going to see this Namor do a great job. So he comes up here and he start using the high ground, okay? Look at the access he has. Once again, I just want to make this point clear, right? We have our people down here. Who can they shoot? They can only shoot what's in front of them. Namor, he has access to the back line and the front line. More access. He also has... This high ground is actually really great in some aspects because you have a lot of cover. You can take cover on the left. You can take cover on the right. You can back up with cover, just like we talked about. The only problem with this high ground is the visibility isn't as high as the high ground we had before, right? And so because of that, the Namor's going to... He's forcing people back because he's on an off angle. Now that he doesn't have as much access, he's going to change his angle and get some more access to the enemy team, right? So now he's up here and he's going to start doing some pressure. Okay, so what happens? What does our Phoenix do? Phoenix gets pressured out. She's like, all right, we have a Namor on the high ground. So this is what good DPS are supposed to do to each other, right? So she's like, I don't want to give Namor all of those benefits, okay? So what she's going to do is she's going to go 1v1 the Namor. And hopefully she's going to get some support to do it. And she's going to force the Namor off. If Namor stayed there, he would have died. So now he has to give it up. This is great. Now, the only thing I don't like here is that the Phoenix doesn't stay on high ground. But this was actually a great case because she would have. But if you're a support and you see somebody using a high ground, especially if you're playing Invis. I've seen so many games won single-handedly by an Invis pulling somebody off of high ground. Pull the Phoenix off of high ground. Now she doesn't have it. She almost dies. Now she's taking up healing resources. If she did die, she'd take up the res. All from a simple pull of noticing, like, they have high ground. That's not good, right? So this is just a perfect example of how to force somebody off of high ground when they're doing it, when they're using it well. Make sure you're paying attention to it, the value you can get. Now, I want to jump over to this third point here, because this is something that comes up a lot as well, specifically on this map. There are times where you actually don't want to use high ground, okay? So at the beginning of this map, you do want to use high ground for the most part. Now, you're already seeing both Phoenixes on high ground, long angles, able to see a lot of things on the map, right? This is great. Now, why do we jump off immediately? Because this high ground is not as advantageous as it looks. So why is it not as advantageous as you look? Because a lot of the times when people try to take this, they're coming back from spawn. And what happens is it's very easy for your team to get split up. We see we have 2 people down, 4 people up, okay? Now, everybody is down. This is what it should be. Everybody should be down or everybody should be up. So when you're up here, also look at what views you actually have. right? You kind of have access here, but they have cover here, they have cover there, and they can push around. You kind of have access here, but people don't normally play there, right? And like being split up, not having access, and the entire map can see you, right? If Invis is back here, she can pull you off, and then you're cut off in multiple different ways. So like, example of this is just a high ground that's not really worth the benefit. And the best way to explain this is trying to contest this point. So green team loses the fight, right? And so they're going to try to push through, and it's just not going to work on the high ground. So what they're actually going to do is they're all going to drop to the low ground. This is what you want to do. Exactly for this reason. Invis tries to push somebody off, pull somebody off the high ground. Your team is together. They have access to lots of cover. They have access to spots over here and health packs and things like that. Whereas if you push through here, your only option is to just push through here. Like, that's it. Once you get to here, even if they back up, now again, your only option is really to drop down, and then you're going to split your team up. So when we talk about high ground, there's also like a very big difference between how you appreciate high ground from a tank perspective versus a DPS, right? You can still use it as a tank in the same way as a DPS, but your relationship is just going to be a little bit different. Splitting isn't a good idea. Not necessarily, especially on a map like this. Splitting can work, but on this specific map, it's not usually worth it. There's also a difference between like splitting your team up and getting your team split up. Does that make sense? Because if you're coming in, and most of the time we're talking about ranked, right? Where it's like people who are not voice calming, or if they are, it's like not bad, right? So if you're calming with your team and you're like, all right, I'm playing Phoenix, hey Invis, come with me, we're gonna go take high ground, we're gonna split off to the side, we're gonna work together as our team knows that, they're gonna stick together, and then we're gonna pincer. Very different from mid-fight, two people get pulled off high ground and are on the bottom. Now your supports are like, do I stay up top, do I go down to the bottom, I don't know. Then both supports accidentally drop, and then people get left over, right? So that is like a huge difference in what makes and breaks fights. Now, I want to give an example. This one I actually should have looked up. I want to give an example of how, as a tank, you should approach. I do... Yo, Quag! Thank you for the Prime sub. Appreciate it. Hope you're doing good. Good to see you. But as a tank, I do like that this Emma realized they're not going to get any advantage from pushing through here and going down. I want to try to get... Let me see if I can find it, and I apologize if I can't. We're going to scroll through. No worries, no worries. We're going to scroll through some games real quick. I'm going to try to find like a Hulk or a dive tank dealing with high ground real quick. So give me a second. Keyboard, and we're going to find a Celestial Hulk. A lot of games. Let's see. Hopefully this pans out. But basically, as a tank, most tanks don't have the ability to make it up to high ground most of the time. However, if you do, and the enemy is using high ground, you need to not let that happen, right? At the same time, though, so let's take this. Let's take this as an example, right? So Hulk is solo tanking here, okay? So it would be nice if the Star-Lord wasn't here, and a tank is very good at pushing a DPS off high ground. However, this tank has other responsibilities. Since he's the solo tank, he can't. So in this scenario, it's the Elsa's job to clear high ground, right? So now that Hulk has made some space, he's gonna... This is actually why I like playing Hulk, is because you can kind of do it all if you're good, right? So you could jump up here, clear high ground, jump back off, keep doing main, jump back, bubble your team, jump back in, do main, and then you notice like, oh, somebody's on an off angle, you can deal with it, right? If you're playing Mag, you don't really have that option, okay? So, yeah. please use high ground more. I've even seen people, like, this is what I used to do on Thing, where I played Mag, Emma. You can actually come up here as a tank as long as you still have a front line. You can walk up here and you can do damage to the back line. Like, look at the access that you have. If you stand here, now you can shoot their entire team, and none of them can shoot you unless they use a movement ability to get to you. In which case, you could just back out, use your own movement abilities, and be fine. So, I also have a really good example in my tank video of using the high ground as a dive tank to get in and out, and then when you're over here doing damage, what that does to the enemy team. So please go check that out. But yeah, that's a very quick and dirty. This is high ground. I'm sure I'm missing lots of stuff. So if anybody has any questions in chat, please let me know. But yeah, that was why high ground is important. It's, I do want to say, like, when you're playing, let's see if we can get an example of that. So green team, we're playing, hopefully we're using high ground. So Hulk is using high ground here just to, like, stop taking damage and to get an idea of what's going on, which is really good. And then we have Daredevil using high ground to get an advantage of what's going on and get close. Then this team actually gives it up really quickly. Phoenix is also a weird character because a lot of the time she does better on the ground anyway. But since Groot is here, I would have this Strange push up top as well. So, be aware of high ground. It's so good. When you're getting oppressed from a high ground, try to send a DPS with a support up top, right? To clear it out. So, okay. I'm waiting for the when should you get off of high ground. Okay. So that's a good point. When do you get off of high ground? The idea of getting off of high ground is actually whenever you're forced off of high ground. Let's see. Look here. We have defensive people using high ground. Find a good example of that. Defense using high ground. Okay, we're gonna find another VOD for that. Give me a second. The basic idea while we're looking is you need to be forced off of high ground. So you have to know your escape routes. You have to know how much health you can and can't give, right? Before you have to go. I think this will probably get a good one. Oh, okay. This is also another example, right? I also find if I'm going to play main tank who can't get to high ground, I want to make high ground super uncomfortable. Yes, so that's something Mag is actually really good at. Mag can stay on main and do damage to people on the high ground and just make it really uncomfortable for them. Yes, absolutely. So this map I really want to talk about because this is a perfect example of when to not even try to use the high ground, right? A lot of people start taking fights up here. They're like, oh, high ground. But the problem is it's nowhere near the point and it doesn't have any access to the point, right? So if we just take a top-down view right here, okay? And let me bring up my drawing tools. So there is a wall here. There's cover here. There's cover here. There's cover here, okay? So if you're standing on the high ground, let's say you have all of this high ground, right? And you have a Phoenix, a Hela, you have a Punisher, you have all the people who can, like, a Hawkeye, take the most advantage of high ground. What can they actually see? They can only see this, right? And even here, they can't see this. Okay? So all of this area, this is just perfectly safe. This is perfectly safe. It's perfectly safe. This stuff over here, this is all perfectly safe. All of this, perfectly safe. All of this stuff is fine. this is the only area that, like, you can't stand. And this is so much room. This is so much room for a team to set up. Plus, now, if you take that high ground, you have to push through one of these 2 chokes, which is just brutal. Like, there's so much stuff. Also, thank you for the follow, Remy. Appreciate it. So, this is just not an advantageous high ground to take in general. So, I always tell people to try to, like, force. So, just try to force point early, okay? Now, let's see if I can find... This is a good example of a high ground that's, like, character specific, okay? So this is a pretty decent high ground. You have some cover. You have some good lines of sight. It's, like, decent, but it's pretty far back. So you're not going to use this with, like, somebody who has a lot of fall off, right? So Elsa can't be up here for sure. Namor, maybe. Hela, maybe. Punisher, Phoenix, probably not. Question for the bad high ground one. Yes, of course. And while we're waiting for your questions, I'm going to try to find a spot of somebody getting forced off of high ground. I don't think we're going to find on this map. If I'm a high mobility character like Star-Lord, it's still good to take to go behind them. Yes, absolutely. So let's jump over to that map. So I'm assuming that's what we're going to see with Elsa here. She's not actually using this as a high ground to shoot down. She's just kind of brawling on it and then gets back down. But at that point, it's more of a, like, a routing kind of problem, a routing thing, where it's like, okay, you know, their whole team is here. Their whole team is here, and I want to get behind them access to here. So, like, if I'm standing here, I'm going to use the high ground, you know, go around and get to them. It's less like I'm going to use the high ground for it and more just this is a path I could take. Now, that being said, though, the high ground does have an advantage as a path you can take from what we said earlier of just, like, being able to see things, right? Like, if you're not playing Daredevil, obviously, because you can see through walls. If you're playing, like, Iron Fist or, I don't know, who else is a diver? Spidey, BP, Captain America is a great example. You're up here, right? If you're on high ground up here, you're like, okay, I can see a bunch of stuff. They can barely see me. So I see, like, okay, they're all pushing out. Now I know I can keep going and do that. Like, you can gain information from being on the high ground. I do remember the Strange back there. That was quite goofy. Okay, let's see. I believe this game should show us some high ground usage. Nope, wrong map. Hydra Base, Tokyo. Again, I apologize. These long form videos are a bit weird. I have to, like, jump around and try to find stuff. I don't script things very well, so I have to make do with what we have. All right, so here we have a Phoenix. We get a little pressure, and now we're going to take the high ground. Now we get access to the back line. Something I haven't talked about yet, another advantage of the high ground that's not really applicable here, but I want to just make it known. So if you're playing this mag, right, or if there's a DPS standing next to them, if everybody is standing on main, they don't really have to make too much of a decision. They know, I'm going to be shooting here, right? But now you have a Phoenix up here. So mag is like, okay, do I shoot down main, or do I completely turn my attention over here, right? And so when we talk about the attention economy, being on high ground is making the enemy team make a decision with their attention, with their cooldowns, with where they're doing damage, where they're taking damage, all this stuff. And in general, the more decisions that you force the enemy team to make, the better off your team is going to be, right? So we're trying to find a spot where we talk about, like, why get off of high ground. So there's a couple reasons. One is you're forced off of it, i.e. the enemy is doing too much damage to you, and if you don't move, you're going to die, right? Because staying on the high ground is not worth dying for, but it is worth doing damage for. The second thing is, when you don't have a reason to be up there, you need to move, right? So this Phoenix right here, they're not doing too much, and being on high ground is also hampering their ult, right? So here, if we ult, we're just going to be here and probably going to break on the ceiling and stuff. So that's a reason to get off high ground. We also want to make sure that we actually have targets to shoot, right? Now, this is going to sound stupid. This is going to sound really, really stupid, right? But I'm going to make this case as obvious as I possibly can. If I'm playing Punisher, Phoenix, Hela, and I'm standing here, this is a great high ground. But it's a terrible high ground if the point's still over there, right? So this is, again, really stupid example. Of course, we're not going to use this high ground, right? But the same logic still applies, right? If we're on this high ground and the entire enemy team has pushed, you know, into here and we can no longer see them, now it's time to leave the high ground, okay? If we're on this high ground and we're defending and the offensive team has pushed back into this area and we can't see them, we need to move, right? So it's like, it really is that simple. There's not much to it, but there is a lot of skill involved with holding high ground. So if you're having a hard time holding high ground and you're a DPS, there's two things I would suggest. First of all, I would try to work with a support. Now, this is only really a thing in higher elo because a lot of supports, they just want to stay on main. They want to help their tanks. I get it. It's scary being alone with a DPS, stuff like that. Don't worry about it. But for anybody of any ranked, I would say go play Doom match, go play 16 versus 16, and get really comfortable with one-on-ones. Because if you're playing DPS and you're good at 1v1ing, then even if you're playing a character who doesn't necessarily take great advantage of the high ground, like if you're playing like Wolverine, right? He doesn't shoot down from the high ground. However, you can still deny the enemy team use of the high ground if you're good at 1v1s. So, I'm not generally a person that tells people you need to switch character. I'm more of a position of like, you need to identify what the enemy team is doing good and make them stop doing that or have a hard time doing that, right? So if you see an enemy is using the high ground really well, go force them off of it. I think I'm just getting diff mechanically and with micro when I lose on high ground. Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of DPS. If you can 1v1 people to the point where they need to go get a support to help force you off of high ground, that is doing so much to the enemy team. Because first of all, you're using the high ground great against them, annoying. And second of all, if they want to force you off, they have to pull a support off of the main line, right? If they pull a support off main line, now you're fighting 1v2. You're going to lose that fight pretty quickly, but that time, your team is gaining ground on main. Then you have a couple options. You can either rejoin on main quickly and try to force down main with your team advantage, or you can, you know, beg a support to come help you, and then you can fight 2v2 on the high ground, things like that. So, yeah. Adam Supremacy. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, we haven't really talked too much about it, but yes, supports can definitely take high ground, right? Like, if you have a good example. I mean, Ultron is obviously a great example. Adam, Mantis, they can heal themselves and they can do a ton of damage. They can take high ground. I think Luna, Loki can kind of do that. Luna can low-key do it. Loki is also great at taking high ground. He's fantastic. On one of the Wakanda maps, it's actually so good for Loki, where he just takes high ground and holds on to it. Oh boy. But I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions. Yeah, unless there's any questions about a specific high ground as well. That's pretty much it. Just be careful as well when you're on high ground. A lot of these, we saw this in the Namor clip at the very beginning. A lot of the times the map itself can break. So like this whole bridge breaks. So you kind of have to back up a little bit. Be careful of that. And then also you can use that as somebody. So like a lot of the times when I take this point and we're waiting for a recontest, I'll actually break this bridge. So that way they can't use it as high ground for cover. I think that's really useful. So, yeah. I hope this opens up people's eyes to how good high ground is, how annoying it is to have it used against you, how to use it against your enemies, and then how to think about retaking it and just being aware, right? Also, map knowledge is important for high ground. You're out of LOS for your supports. Know your health packs. Oh, yeah. So this is a really good point to make. So if you're up here fighting as the Phoenix, like look at your supports. They can't heal you, right? So we have a Deadpool. If he wants to heal you, he has to do the same thing we were talking about earlier. He has to pull his attention all the way from the front to heal you. And you're up on the high ground and you have cover from them. So you're much more isolated. So that just goes back to like playing Deathmatch, getting really comfortable with your 1v1s, knowing the map, knowing there's health packs down here, right? So if you get forced off this one, you can jump down here and get this health pack. We can go like over here and get this health pack. Okay? So, yeah. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Another Rant Friday. Thank you guys so much. If you have questions, please leave a comment, join the Discord, things like that. And yeah, get out there and use the high ground. Take care. God bless. Catch you in the next one. Bye.